is 4 o'clock in time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. We'll hear from Todd Monken at the NFL owners meeting in just a minute. NFL.com's Eric Edholm on the possibility of Myles Garrett getting traded after the Browns reworked his contract.
I think it's probably slightly more possible now, no matter what they say. I mean, obviously, it certainly has to be factored in. Now, obviously, I don't think the Epinesa deal falling apart has anything to do with that, or if that's it triggers them to make a move or anything. I don't believe there's any connection between those two things. When you sign that contract, you sign Myles to that contract, you obviously were at least prepared for him to be a Brown for life. But at the same time, if you've kind of reevaluated things and feel like you're not in a position to compete, in a 2-year span, and or you think you can get the kind of value back that only a handful of non-quarterbacks in this league can even, dream about getting, then maybe you reconsider at that point. But I don't know. It just feels like there's so many balls up in the air right now. Your star pass rusher may or may not be in the trade market. The quarterback situation we just ran through. A talented roster with a rookie class last year that was so exciting to watch develop, and you feel like there's at least somewhat of a core in place, but the chaos is what sort of makes you wonder if it's ever going to come together.
To get straightened out. Todd Monken at the owners' meetings today talking about how much of an advantage it is for him to have brought a good deal of his offensive staff with him, including offensive line coach George Warhop.
I think hiring Travis Schweitzer, George Warhop, Danny Breyer, Ian Colsey, Jeff Blasco, who was here with me in 19, and Mike Bajakian. I mean, what an elite staff. And then to have been with those guys before and allow you to get up to speed quickly. And George and I are aligned, as Travis and all of us are, in terms of who we want as our offensive line coach. And that is to be able to run off the football and make them deal with us. And that's an old school mentality, and that's what we want.
It means good things ahead for Quinshon Judkins running the football as well. All right, longtime Browns beat reporter Tony Grossi on the Browns quarterback situation and what Jimmy Haslam said in regards to Deshaun Watson having a blank slate with new head coach Todd Monken.
Nothing I heard yesterday has changed my opinion that the quarterback room is essentially set, and they're paying Watson anyway. They expect him to be healthy and let the better man win.
Do you think this is a vote of confidence in Watson's ability, or that they still as an organization just really don't believe all that much in Shedeur Sanders?
I think a little bit of both, but probably more so on Watson, and the hope that, maybe we could squeeze something out of him in this last year.
Well, that was courtesy of ESPN Cleveland. And again, we'll talk plenty about Watson. We'll hear more from Todd Monken, Scott Petrak from the Chronicle Telegram, and Jimmy Watkins will be along to talk Browns in just a minute. Let's turn our attention to the Cavaliers. Cavs in Utah taking on the Jazz last night, coming in winners of 6 of their last 7. The Cavs were actually trailing in this one, 105-103, midway through the fourth quarter. Thomas Bryant gets the hoop there to tie things up at 105. James Harden, the rebound, and he finds Keon Ellis out and running for the transition bucket. Cavs with a 2-point lead. Donovan Mitchell to Evan Mobley, gets the basket and one. Mobley had a huge night. Sam Merrill finds Mobley this time. He had 34 points, 17 rebounds. The Cavs defeat the Jazz 112-113. Cavs now 4th in the Eastern Conference, 47-28. They are 3.5 games behind, or a game and a half behind the Knicks. They're out west. They will face the Lakers in Los Angeles tonight. Guardians opened up a 3-game series against Los Angeles Dodgers. Last night, Parker Messick got the start, and Parker Messick, who won the 5th starter's job in spring training, outstanding against one of the best lineups in baseball. 6 innings pitched, 5 hits, 5 strikeouts, no earned runs. A quality start for Messick against the Dodgers. Third inning, man on second, Stephen Kwan. That's another RBI double down into the right field corner. 1-0 Guardians with the lead. Seventh inning, now 2-0 Guardians. Daniel Schneemann hits one, and this one's going to find the gap out in left center. 2 runs will score. Guardians led 4-0. Dodgers did score 2 runs off Cade Smith in the 9th, but the Guardians win it 4-2 to take the first of a 3-game series. Tanner Bybee will go against Shohei Ohtani tonight. Game 2 of the series. Guardians back home to open things up. Home opener Friday against the Cubs. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Scott Petrak up first talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
You got so much to do. It's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day. 'Cause it's fun all over the state. So come on. Great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
Browns are up first on Sports4CLE. New head coach Todd Monken from the NFL owners meeting, talking about how the QB competition will run for the Browns, as well as how the reps will be divided.
I wouldn't say they're going to be evenly dispersed, but we'll definitely disperse them to give ourselves a chance to at least evaluate who we have on the roster, whoever that might be, as we go through the offseason.
I know you said ideally you would like to go into training camp like knowing who the starter is, but is that realistic, especially given like Deshaun is a player who hasn't really played live game reps in almost 2 years now?
Well, you'd love to be able to come out of the spring with a depth chart. That doesn't mean there's still not competition, but I do think you have to narrow the reps, or at least balance up the reps of who you anticipate has come out of the spring certainly in a position to be a starter. Well, I think there's always competition, irrespective of the number of reps a player gets. A number of reps a player gets doesn't eliminate competition. It just, in a given day, let's say, for instance, you want to see a quarterback with the first group, a second group, a third group. Well, are you going to divide those reps up evenly? Are you going to divide up the reps everywhere evenly? I don't see it that way. I don't see it. That doesn't mean there's not competition. I just see it as in a given day, and it'll be daily in terms of who gets what reps and when. Because we certainly want to allocate our reps to the players we feel like are going to give us the best chance to win.
With that, let's welcome in Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Chronicle Telegram. You can catch him at brownzone.com as well. Scott, there was a lot about reps in Todd Monken's media availability, reps with the quarterbacks.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if he said a ton. A lot of times we focus, as reporters, okay, is it fair that quarterback X is working with the ones so he gets to throw to, Jerry Jeudy and David Njoku and whatever and gets protected by the starting offensive line, where the other quarterback goes with, quote unquote, lesser receivers and lesser offensive linemen. So, that's something we focus on. I don't think it doesn't sound like Monken's focus. It's about, giving who he wants to see in a particular day, those reps, if he wants to see him with the first team, second team, whatever. But it doesn't mean that the guy working with the second team isn't competing for the starting job. You just have to decide who gets the reps. And I think he believes it's counterproductive to go, okay, this guy gets one turn and then the next guy gets another turn, or the alternate reps, whatever it is, to make it quote unquote fair. I don't think that he believes that's the best way to prepare your starting quarterback.
I know you wrote an article. Jimmy Haslam at those owners' meetings yesterday said that Deshaun Watson had a great chance with new head coach Todd Monken. Take us through that article and kind of just what you thought of that comment.
Yeah, I think Jimmy's overall sentiment was, they're cautiously optimistic that Deshaun Watson can stay healthy and play better than he has during his tenure with the Browns. Right? The backdrop for all of this is that a year ago at the league meetings, Jimmy Haslam said the trade was a big swing and miss, which wasn't anything everybody knew that, but it struck people because it's the owner of the team talking about a guy on his roster. So, they liked what they saw to Deshaun Watson in his rehab last year. He's owed $46 million in cash this year, so he's going to be on the roster. He's going to be part of this quarterback competition to whatever degree. But they have a sense of optimism that Todd Monken will help Deshaun Watson. And that's when Jimmy was talking about great chance for a fresh start, it was in the perspective of he gets to work with Todd Monken. We hope that helps Watson get back to the player he was, or get back to being close to the player he was. But Jimmy admitted nobody knows if that's going to happen or if that's even possible.
Yeah, and again, remember, 2 Achilles injuries, basically a rebuilt shoulder before that. So he has taken a beating. Longtime Browns beat reporter Tony Grossi, something that wasn't really known, the dynamic between Andrew Berry and Todd Monken.
Tony, did you get any better sense if Monken and Berry are tied together, or one reports to the other, or how they're seen as a group together?
No, the coach is now reporting to the general manager.
Whoa.
Andrew Berry had conceded that. And then I was told that actually that's not a change, because when, get this, when the Stefanski and Andrew both got their extensions, which was after 2023.
Right.
It's been said to me that at that point, the head coach was then reporting to the GM.
And that courtesy of ESPN Cleveland. That's the first time I heard that.
Yeah, the change in 2023 is new to me. It's no surprise, I don't think, that Todd Monken reports to Andrew Berry. Andrew Berry led the coaching search, right? Jimmy Haslam was out front and clear that Berry was leading the coaching search without Paul DePodesta here anymore as the chief strategy officer, that some of those duties would fall on Andrew Berry. So Monken reporting up to Berry isn't a surprise. The fact that the language changed after 2023 or when the extensions came, that could have been a sign that they knew that Paul DePodesta wasn't going to be around that long.
Yeah, and you know what? That's fine. It's interesting. It makes sense, actually, to have your head coach report to your general manager, not both reporting to somebody else. I know you wrote another article, just Andrew Berry calling Myles Garrett a career Brown with all the trade speculation because they redid it. They never really said why they redid the contract. What are your takeaways from all of that we've heard from the owners' meetings?
Yeah, it's interesting because I really don't think that, and I've been told this, and Andrew Berry said it, and Jimmy Haslam talked about it, and that they planned to trade Myles Garrett, right? That wasn't the purpose of the modifying the language in the contract. It does give them that more flexibility. I understand why people across the league look at it and say, well, now it benefits the Browns by moving the option where they pay the bonus options for moving it from March to close to the season. It would save the Browns money if they traded Myles Garrett before the year in that window. It would help them salary cap wise. So I get it. The Browns believe it just gives them greater contract flexibility in the long term overall. There's some benefit to Myles Garrett that they threw into the modified language. So I would not rule it out. And Andrew Berry was asked, can you unequivocally say that you won't trade Myles? And didn't give a direct answer and talked about, he's a career Brown, and doesn't even want to talk about it, doesn't want to give it oxygen. So I get that it's going to continue to be a topic, and if it doesn't get traded this year, and then the Browns aren't supposed to be good again in 27, it could be a topic again then. But I believe the Browns when they say that they don't want to or plan to trade Myles Garrett. This gives them some flexibility. Maybe the season starts and Myles is unhappy, or not season starts, but you go throughout the offseason, Myles is unhappy. He asks to be traded again privately, and this allows the Browns to maneuver more. favorably to them, I could see that as a scenario. But I believe the Browns when they say they don't want to trade him, they don't plan to trade him. When Jimmy Haslam calls him a unicorn and the best player in the league, I don't think that's an exaggeration. I think that's how they feel about him. And all those people that believe the Browns would be better off trading Myles Garrett, I think they underestimate how strongly the Browns feel about Myles as a player and just how special he is and how it's difficult to get quote-unquote fair value if you trade the best player in the league or the best defensive player in the league.
Yeah, I mean, and I get a headache listening to the national people that talk about 3 draft picks. Those 3 draft picks are going to be towards the back of the first round. They're not going to give you the ammunition that you think they're going to give you to move up and take a quarterback up high. Nobody that needs a quarterback is trading first-round picks in a draft that has a lot of quarterbacks. That just doesn't happen.
Right. No, you're right. And sure, it would give you more resources to try to do that, to try to move up to get the quarterback you want. But you would need the right scenario. You would need a team drafting in the top, 3, 5, to not need a quarterback. And then to be willing to trade, and be willing to trade with you as opposed to somebody else. So it's not as simple as trading Myles Garrett guarantees you find your franchise quarterback. It just is not that simple, and I think people are wrong when they assume it's that simple. And then Haslam said something that we've talked about on here multiple times, David, that they think Myles Garrett will still be an elite defensive player when the Browns are good again, right? Or able to contend, whatever that window is. And they hope it's as quick as 26, but maybe even 27 would be more realistic, depending on how quarterback plays out. They think he's still going to be an elite defensive player. And if you believe that he's going to be the best defensive player, one of the top 3 defensive players, it's awful difficult to trade that guy and replace him.
Yeah, and I think he's got probably another contract that they're going to have to pay him. Maybe not quite as high, but he's look at the way he takes, I mean, other than driving, he takes care of his body real well. And, he's going to be around for a while. All right, Todd Monken talked about what he's seen from the quarterbacks in the offseason since he's been hired, especially Shedeur Sanders.
Well, it's too early to really evaluate him, other than it's been great that he's been in the building. It's refreshing to see a player that recognizes where he's at and where he wants to get to.
And Gabriel hasn't been in the building?
As far as I know, he has not. I have not seen Dylan yet. Deshaun was in early when I got the job, so I got a chance to sit down with him. I really haven't looked at much film from the past of Deshaun. I know he's going to be part of the roster, and I know he's played at an elite level in the past, and we're excited to get to work with him. I know he's excited about getting back here and getting to work.
Now, again, everything's voluntary, so you can't hold it against Dylan Gabriel that he's not there. It's just kind of interesting, the dynamic.
It is. Now, I do think it's important to remember, he lives in Hawaii, so it's not an easy transition or an easy travel. And you can't spend a lot of time with the coaches. You're not supposed to talk football. There's rules in place. Yeah, you can say hi and work out there. But to me, it feels more like, from a Shedeur standpoint, a commitment, right? He's showing the commitment to be there. But he's got a house in the area. He's spending some time here. I wouldn't read too much into that.
Scott Patrick and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the side of the break, we'll talk a little bit more about the quarterback position and the roster. Sports for CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrak from the Chronicle Telegram as well as brownzone.com. Scott, all right, let's assume, and it's a big assumption at this point, that Shedeur Sanders wins the starting quarterback job. What does it have to look like for Todd Monken and Andrew Berry to say, okay, let's move forward with Shedeur Sanders?
Sure. The first thing easiest to point to are the wins, right? Do they win a bunch of games? Are they competitive in games? Does he give them a chance to win? Jimmy Haslam talked about expecting them to win more games than they did last year. So, does he get them to 7 or 8 in where the team feels like he can take another step the next year and get to where they want to be as an organization? But deeper than that, it's building consistency. It's building on the improvements he made last year. And I thought he made improvements in a bunch of different areas at different times in those last 7 games. And I think the Browns would say the same thing. But it's doing it more consistently. It's raising those overall numbers, which rank near the bottom of the league in completion percentage and those type of numbers. It's avoiding the big sacks, which we saw him do from time to time, but took some that you wouldn't want him to take if you're the coach. So I think there's a million things that you can evaluate, and they will evaluate Shedeur Sanders on to decide whether or not he's the guy they should stick with. And part of that's off the field, right? How does he pick up the offense? How does he handle the transition to a new coach, a new staff, a new play caller? All those things go into the evaluation of, hey, can this guy be the franchise quarterback at some point? Because if you don't believe that, then none of the other stuff matters. You've got to go try to find somebody you do believe can be a franchise quarterback.
So another Brown from last year's team that's not signed anywhere is cornerback Martin Emerson, coming off that Achilles injury. Andrew Berry asked about Emerson's future with the Browns at the owners' meetings.
Yeah, love MJ. Absolutely love MJ, both as a person and as a player. Selfishly would love to have him back. I think we're also realistic that, with MJ and the injury that he's coming off of, to reach his, personal goals, he's also got to be in a position where he has maybe a strong opportunity to compete for a starting spot. That's probably a little bit harder with how we're configured with Denzel and Tyson. But certainly if that changes in terms of press, we'd love that back.
It's kind of interesting. It's first we've heard on Emerson, and not surprising, but just interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? That he's not going to get the contract he wanted when he was thinking about heading into free agency after 2025, right? So training camp starts, he thinks, okay, I'm going to have a huge year and either get a big-time extension here or go somewhere else. Then he tears the Achilles, so that's off the table. So now it's you sign a 1-year prove-it deal. Do you sign that in Cleveland where you're the third corner, and in order to get those reps, you need somebody to get hurt? Or do you go somewhere else that doesn't have as set a starting quarterback tandem as the Browns do? And, Andrew Berry said it. That's just a reality. Martin Emerson Jr., in the attempt to get that big long-term contract after 26, needs to play a lot in 26. So where is that opportunity going to present itself? It's probably not here with Ward and Campbell. Now, if no opportunity presents itself elsewhere or no better one, could he come back? Sure. But that feels unlikely for a guy that had some really good tape in those first couple of years.
All right, Todd Monken, again, asked what he's looking for in wide receivers in his offense. Browns obviously need some help at wide receiver.
Well, I mean, it's real simple. Big, fast, physical, ball skills, run after catch. I mean, of course, that's what everybody's looking for. But I do think, like any position, you're looking for a player that, what is their elite trait? How can you continue to develop and round out the rest of their game? And how does it fit into what you want to do offensively?
It's kind of interesting hearing them. You're talking about elite traits and kind of maximizing it. That's been a consistent theme. That means it's not any one specific guy. It's what can this guy do well? How does it fit into my offense?
Yeah, right. So if the guy's elite trait is hands or it's run after catch or it's whatever that is, yeah, how do you maximize that? I think he fits with the organizational philosophy not to pigeonhole themselves. I think in an honest moment, in a perfect world, would you love a guy that's 6'5" and can jump, in the red zone? Yeah. Would you love a quick guy out of the slot? Sure, but that doesn't always present itself. You don't always have every piece you're looking for. But he hit on all those big things you need, right? The run after catch, the ball skills, the great hands. Like, that translates through no matter what size, speed, right? If you have those things, that's what they're looking for. And, yeah, they definitely have a hole that I think they need to fill.
You look at this roster as we sit here 3 weeks before the draft, whatever it is. Has it improved? If so, how much?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, David, because on one hand, if you look at where they were at this time a year ago, and let's say offensive line, for example, Jack Conklin, Wyatt Teller, Ethan Posick, and Joe Bitonio. Are Titus Howard, Alton Jenkins, Tevin Jenkins, and Zion Johnson better than those guys? I mean, the Browns hope so, and I think they believe they are, given how 2025 ended. I don't know if you look at that offensive line group in its prime 3-4 years ago, you would say, no, I probably like the Browns group better, right? So I think it's tough. I think they did what they needed to do. They addressed the huge need across the offensive line. They brought in Quincy Williams when Devin Bush left to sign with the Bears. So I think they did what they needed to do, and I think given how last year ended, they're certainly better on the offensive line than how 2025 ended. I just don't know if I could, say they're, super improved or, more improved than they were at any point over the last couple of years. But I think they did what they needed to do.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, the offensive line was really bad a year ago, and it should be better than it was, I guess, is the best way to say that. Scott Petrick and I are going to step aside, take one more timeout, other side of the break, talk a little bit about the draft and what the Browns might do coming up in about 3 weeks. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me, the Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day, put a little play in your day.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrick, Browns beat reporter for the Chronicle Telegram, brownzone.com on the internet. Browns head coach Todd Monken from the owners meeting asked about the offensive linemen in this year's draft.
Haven't drilled down that far into position specific. We've looked at all of the players, have a pretty good idea of where we have them stacked. Andrew will have to speak more on that, but I think there's excellent depth in the O-line room. And in some ways, left tackle and right tackle, sure, it's important, the left tackle with a right-handed quarterback, but I know this, when TJ Watt lines up on the right side, you'd feel a lot better if you had a really good right tackle. I mean, when we were playing Miles and he jumps over there, we weren't going to jump Ronnie Stanley over there, so you really need two tackles. Certainly the left side is critical.
Scott, I kind of chuckled when I heard him answer that way. What do you think? What does Andrew Berry and the Browns do at 6? Is it a tackle? Is it a wide receiver?
Yeah, yes, it's one of those two. I do think the offensive line moves they've made, and we just talked about, create some flexibility and lessens the immediacy of needing to take a left tackle at number 6. So I think as opposed to the combine, I would feel receivers in play here more than I did at the combine. I don't know if I'm ready to say that I would favor receiver, but if you're asking me to pick one, I'd probably say receiver right now, just given you could probably get the number 1 receiver on the board, whereas I don't think you get the number 1 tackle on the board, and I think there's value in getting the number 1 guy at a position when you're drafting that high. So I'd go receiver right now.
Yeah, and here, tell me if you disagree. I understand. I would go wide receiver. I think if you get a wide receiver if you get the best wide receiver in this draft, heck, I like Lemon, I like Tate. They're different receivers, but I think they can do the same thing. A guy like Lemon or Tate makes Jerry Jeudy a little bit better because he has more room. He makes Carol Fannin a little bit better because he has more room. He makes Quinshon Judkins a little bit better because you're not going to get an extra guy in the box if you've got guys that can threaten you from different areas. I really want them to get a wide receiver early in the draft.
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion. I get everything you're saying. I also think left tackle's probably more important than a receiver in general. You know, if I were ranking my positions of importance, I think I'd put left tackle slightly ahead of receiver. Doesn't mean you don't need both of them. Doesn't mean in this particular instance that receiver couldn't be more valuable to the Browns. You might be right about that. So I completely understand what you're saying. I think they'd probably be better off trading down a little bit if that were possible for them, because I'm not sure any of those guys that are going to be available at 6 on the offensive side of the board are worth number 6. You know, it doesn't mean you couldn't take one. Doesn't mean we've been great there. But do you feel better about Mekhi Lemon at 10? Yeah. Do you feel better about, Monroe Freeling at 10? Yes. Carnell Tate might be the guy that, if you got him at 10, it'd be a steal. So 6 is where you'd have to get him. I understand that discussion. It still feels a little bit high for a receiver that's not Calvin Johnson to me. But I think those are the things the Browns have to work through.
Do you think they draft a quarterback? And if you do, who are you listening out for?
Yeah, I do. I just think, Andrew Berry talked about it a little bit. I don't think they're going to shy away from adding a third young guy to that room. I think that's how they're set up right now and how they're leaning. I don't think it's in the first round. I think you probably have to start paying attention to 39, especially and maybe only if Ty Simpson fell to 39. I don't know if you take a Nussmeier there, assuming he'd be the next guy off the board. But yeah, I think they take somebody. These guys are intriguing. Nussmeier intrigues me. And they all have their issues. He's coming off injuries, didn't play that great, isn't that big. Aller's coming off an injury. Didn't play that great in some key moments. Carson Beck played a ton, has a history with Todd Monken. Right now, if I had to pick a guy, I'd go Beck just because I think it's easy to connect those dots, and I think there is some talent there.
Yeah, I'm curious because if you think about it, Todd Monken should have a big input into that, and you're going to want a guy that's a little mobile and a guy that can throw the ball a ton, and that
guys are hard to find, Dave.
Yeah, you know who, and he didn't play well. His tape is not good. Drew Aller is strong arm, and he's much more mobile than people think.
Yeah, right. I mean, and if you get him later, you have the whole discussion of the pressure of playing at home and those type of things. He feels like he's not ready to play right now, which is fine, right? And that's probably true about a bunch of these draft quarterbacks in the draft. So, there's a lot to like physically from Aller. It's the other areas where you'd have to improve, right? The decision-making in key moments, the accuracy.
Yeah, and I'm curious what Todd Monken looks at when he sees all of these quarterbacks, because I do think he is a guy that can get – he can look at a quarterback and say, we can do this with this guy. I think he has in his history.
Yeah, but that guy has to, it starts with accuracy and decision-making, right? We point to all those, the real tangibles, the arm strength and the size. But you can only, if the guy isn't accurate and doesn't make good decisions, I don't care what kind of system you're running, it's hard for that guy to be successful.
Yeah, without question. Scott, thanks so much. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Scott.
Thanks, Dave.
Scott Petrak, make sure you check him out. BrownZone.com on the internet. He is the Browns beat reporter for the Chronicle-Telegram. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Jimmy Watkins, columnist for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports for CLE. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, Dave. This is Mike from Wellston. The Myles Garrett trade rumor mill is going wild, so I've got one off the cuff for you to digest, if you don't mind. This has to do with the Cowboys. The Cowboys trade 12 and 20 to the Raiders for their first-round pick next year. The Raiders aren't looking for a quarterback since they've got Fernando Mendoza in their front pocket for this year's draft. So the quarterback class of 27 isn't that important to Las Vegas. The Cowboys then, after June 1st, trade their first round in 27, the Raiders' first round in 27, Cowboys' first round in 28, and C.D. Lamb to the Browns for Myles Garrett. Just thoughts. Thanks.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Jimmy Watkins, columnist for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. That one's a little out there for me, but I like what he's thinking. The problem I have with Myles Garrett for three picks that are first-round picks, they're going to be, by and large, second-round picks because it's going to be a contender. And how do you feel about pick 24 this year? You're having trouble with it? Well, it's probably going to be 25, 26, 30 if it's Myles Garrett.
Yeah, there's a couple things there. That's a nice offer, all those picks and C.D. Lamb for Myles Garrett. I just also don't think that's realistic. I think we saw Max Crosby, who is not quite Myles, but comparable, a little younger, go for 2 firsts in the open market, and obviously there were some complications with that. So I don't understand why Myles would go for exponentially more than that. I still maintain that, as much as everyone wants to read into contract restructuring, it's weird. Andrew Berry has no incentive whatsoever to trade Myles Garrett because as much as we all understand that this is kind of a multi-year build, there is, I think, real pressure to at least improve or give the illusion of improvement or come out of next year feeling better than we came out of this year, because this is year 7 on the job. And then, year 3 now of, the dark days of admitting the Deshaun Watson trade as a failure and, trying to dig yourself out of that. So he can't be the guy who puts you in this place where it's so bad that you need to rebuild within a rebuild. And then he also can't be the guy that traded for Deshaun Watson and traded away Myles Garrett. To your point, Dave, everybody loves picks, but no team that trades for Myles Garrett, barring, a disaster with that team, is likely to be picking anywhere near the top of the draft. That's a Myles Garrett trade is not a lottery ticket for 2027 quarterbacks. It's not. It's a lottery ticket towards, the 4th best tackle in next year's draft, or, if it's a deep edge rusher class, grabbing one of those guys on the back end, or if you like a guy that's a borderline first, second round pick, okay, great, maybe you can get that. It's just not. It's not as sexy as it sounds. It's not as, and I would argue it doesn't sound that sexy in the first place. But if you're looking for draft picks, you're looking to retool, those types of picks are not going to be as good as you think. And I'm not of the opinion that the Browns are in a place where they're going to be trading Myles.
Yeah, and the other thing is, because that draft is loaded, nobody's going to want to trade picks. You're not going to be able to trade up. You're going to see the teams that are back. If they don't need a quarterback, it's Jeremiah Smith or it's the edge rusher that's the stud. Nobody is going to want to allow people to trade up next year in that draft. I'm curious. They spent a lot of money on the offensive line. Andrew Berry did. What are your thoughts? Do you think they overspent? And I know you've written an article. Take us through kind of your thoughts with the rebuild of the offensive line.
Yeah, I think two things are true here. I think the Browns did overspend, and I think they had to. And I think it's a good thing that they prioritized the position in that way. I'm not sure that Zion Johnson and Elgin Jenkins and Titus Howard are going to be worth those contracts. I'm not sure. And in a vacuum, sometimes that's all people see. But I am sure that the Browns have an outsized need along the offensive line. And I also think that when you are a team that just won 8 games in 2 years, you need to do a little something to entice free agents to come play for you. And sometimes that includes paying them a little bit above their market. You call it the Browns tax if you want. But like, these guys had other opportunities to play for franchises that were in better positions to win. You don't have that. You don't have a very clear vision to sell on that front, so you have to sell them on something else. Titus Howard has been an average-ish tackle. Zion Johnson has been, a better run blocker than a pass blocker. Elgin Jenkins has 2 Pro Bowls on his resume. It's not at the position that he played last year, and we'll see where the Browns want to put him, whether it's center or guard. Guard is where he made a couple of Pro Bowls. We'll see what they want to do with those guys. But I think the overspend, while might make you a little nervous, it is an acknowledgement that they know what their biggest needs are and that they are willing to do what it takes to fill those needs. I would also say in the case of, at least in Zion Johnson's case and Titus Howard's case, like, there's a track record of good durability here. Zion Johnson has not missed many starts in his career. Titus Howard, the last 2 or 3 years, it's been better for him, 16 and 15 games, right? Elgin Jenkins, that's a question mark for him. He's coming off of an injury. That's part of the reason why the 2 for 24 number might make you a little nervous. But there are no perfect free agents, right? Like, there are people in the NFL. The league is set up so that if you don't want a player to reach true free agency, they probably won't. And so if people who get to that point, there's a reason they get to that point, and you have to allocate your resources the best way you can and trust your instincts when you see someone that you think could be a good fit for you.
What about left tackle? What are your thoughts there? What do you think happens in the draft? Is that none of them jump out? They just don't. It's not like, oh, we get this guy, we can plug him in. There's about 4 of them. It's like, well, if I squint really hard, he looks like a pretty good left tackle.
Yeah, you're right about that, Dave. It's like Francis Manoa seems to be the guy that is a consensus best tackle. He played a lot of right tackle at Miami. Spencer Fano has played some left tackle, was a freshman All-American at left tackle at Utah, but they switched him over to right for the last 2 years of his career. And I don't know if you're an arm length guy, but his arms are about, an inch and a half shorter than most of the NFL says they should be to play that position. It's entirely possible you use that pick, you're drafting a good guard, and there's nothing wrong with drafting a good guard, but the hole is at left tackle. Monroe Freeling is this year's annual combine darling. He's only got 15 starts under his belt, but he did wow in the real athletic testing at the combine. We know for a fact that the Browns like those kinds of guys. We also know that Andrew Berry believes, just to put it out there for Fano and Maui Noah, that Andrew Berry believes that if you can play one tackle spot, that you can play both. I don't know that any of these guys are franchise left tackles. I do know that if you want to add a franchise left tackle, you have to draft him early. I did the research on Football Reference that since 2000, we have 29 tackles that have been drafted that ended up making multiple Pro Bowls. And I use that just as a benchmark to be like, hey, if you make 2 Pro Bowls, you could probably be a long-term answer at the position, right? That's what you're looking for when you're picking this high in the draft. 19 of those guys were drafted in the first round. So that's only 9 that are going in the second round or later. And among those first round picks, because I keep hearing this thing where, well, if there's better receivers at 6, then why not go receiver at 6 where you know you're going to get a good player and then go tackle at 24? That's not what history tells us either. These first round picks, the average draft slot of these first round picks is 9.9 among the tackles that make multiple Pro Bowls. 6 of them went 6th where the Browns happen to be drafting or higher in the draft. Like everything about the modern day draft history is telling us if you want to draft a left tackle, you need to take him pretty early. That doesn't mean just take any old left tackle at 6 or any old tackle prospect at 6. But if you believe in a guy at 6 and you don't think he's going to be there later on, then I think you got to pull the trigger. And because again, if you try to employ the, we could wait till 24 strategy. Some of these guys that you think will be around at 24, like the NFL teams know this history too. So their left tackles get heavily weighted in the draft, not quite to the level of a quarterback where teams are willing to take huge risks on those guys in the first round. But like these tackle prospects tend to go early. So a guy like, let's say Caden Proctor, Alabama, who just actually had a nice pro day, by the way, was, in the early to mid 20s on a lot of boards. That's not where he's getting drafted. Like, I think Caden Proctor is going to go in the top 20. These, the Clemson kid whose name escapes me right now, he's
Blake Miller
ranked in like Blake Miller, right? He's ranked in like that early second round range. I bet you Blake Miller is going to go in the first round, right? So if it's pretty simple, if you believe that there's a tackle prospect worth drafting and you don't think you can get him at 24, then you should pull the trigger at 6 because otherwise you're just going to have a hole there.
All right, before I let you go, a quarterback who's kind of out there, and I know you've written about him, Anthony Richardson. What are your thoughts? Should the Browns be interested in that guy?
Assuming the price is what I think it is, yeah, why not? Like the Colts gave Anthony Richardson permission to seek a trade like a month ago now, and we haven't heard a peep about it since. So that, to me, the longer it stays quiet on that front, to me, the more reasonable the price becomes. And the Browns, I mean, let's just be honest, we don't have, I'm open-minded to giving Shedeur another year as the starter, but we certainly don't have enough evidence that suggests you can't add another young quarterback to the room based on what he did last year. Deshaun Watson, I think, should never play another game in this uniform. I'm not sure that's going to happen. Dylan Gabriel, I feel like Shedeur had a better year than him, but I still think that I say that to say if I'm open to bringing in a new quarterback based on what Shedeur did, then yeah, with Dylan it's the same thing. I'm not married to Dylan Gabriel as a prospect, and the Anthony Richardson stuff is complicated because he didn't play well with the Colts. But I think we all should have seen that coming. In fact, I think we all knew coming out of the draft, or at least we all said we knew, the draft intelligentsia. We all knew that it was going to take a while for Anthony Richardson to get it. And then he started 15 games with the Colts, and now the Colts are off of him. It's like, well, wait a minute. Didn't we just have this conversation about how long it was going to take this guy? He started 12 or 13 college games, and he's super raw as a prospect. The tools were always the sell with him. The tools haven't changed. He still has an incredible arm. He still moves really well. Durability concerns, I'll hear you. But again, I think all the concerns you have should be priced in. Like we're talking about another one of these late round pick swap type trades, maybe a slight bump up from the Justin Fields price just because, Anthony Richardson is less of a known quantity. It's like the way I put it in writing was it's like buying a lottery ticket. And most lottery tickets don't cash, but when they cash, they tend to cash pretty big. And that's how I feel about Anthony Richardson. I don't think the pre-draft prognostication of his potential has changed at all. I just think that it's like when you buy a car and you drive it around off the lot a little bit, it loses some of its price. It loses some of its value. But okay, now someone else might be interested in buying the car for less.
I'm with you. They could use a lottery ticket at the quarterback position. Jimmy, as always, great stuff, man. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dave.
Jimmy Watkins, make sure you check him out. Always good and insightful commentary. Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We turn our attention to the Guardians. Paul Hoynes, Guardians beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Straight ahead. Stay with us.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little flag in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little flag in your day. Put a little flag in your day.
We turn our attention to the Guardians out in Los Angeles, getting ready for Game 2 of a 3-game series against the Dodgers. Rookie outfielder Chase DeLauter, a great start to the season, taking home an impressive American League honor.
AL Player of the Week. How does that sound?
Man, it's crazy. It's crazy. Dream come true type of thing, you know? To me, I just think it's cool. You know, especially this week, we're going to face some guys that I literally grew up watching for a long time. And I think it's just understanding that we belong here and we're good enough to go take a couple games from these guys, you know? Yeah, the hitting staff here has done a great job. You know, that's what the days are for, you know, preparing early on before BP, you know, understanding what the guy on the other side is trying to do, what their strengths are, again, with my strengths and trying to match that. You know, I try to stay away from a lot of, I've said this before, but like visualizing and trying to, you know, put in my head exactly what's gonna happen. I think it just puts a lot of pressure on yourself. I just try to look at, again, what they're good at, what I'm good at, and then just go play some wiffle ball.
Let's welcome in Paul Hoynes, Guardians beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, is with the team in Los Angeles. Hoynes, we appreciate you joining us. I know you've written a couple of articles about Chase DeLauter. What are your takeaways? Again, a great start to the season.
Jeez, what a opening season! What a series to open the season with in Seattle, when he hits, goes 6 for 17 with 4 home runs, 5 RBIs. He hits 2 home runs in his first official regular season game. First Cleveland player to do that. The 5th player to hit a home run in his first major league at bat. First Cleveland player, I should say. Just an incredible start. I mean, it was it was fun to watch. It was like you didn't know what was going to happen next.
Yeah, and that 2-hole in front of Jose is important. And you know, if he can, it's ridiculous to expect him to do what he did. If he can be competent and keep the at-bats like they've been, even when he's made outs, he's had pretty good at-bats. Or he has not given away any at-bats, really.
Yeah, in that one game Saturday night in Seattle, I think he goes 0 for 4, strikes out a couple times, and then he hits some 97-mile-an-hour fastball, that's outside the zone, up and outside the zone, over the left field fence. He goes oppo, and helps them win a game in the 10th inning, 6-4 or 6-5, I should say. He's got amazing power, amazing, really quick bat, really fast hands, and he kind of he cuts that swing off with the leg kick that he has, and he all of a sudden the swing just stops and the ball keeps going. It's really an interesting. It's interesting to watch him swing the bat for sure. So
Tanner Bybee inching closer to getting back on the mound after a little bit of a scare in that first thing. From your understanding, he good to go tonight against the Dodgers in Game 2?
Yeah, all indications are that he'll pitch. He'll make the start against Ohtani and the Dodgers. And yesterday they brought up Colby Allard just in case as a kind of a security blanket if Bybee comes out early or he can't make the start. Colby Allard has been stretched out to 3-4 innings, so he would step in one way or the other there.
So let's talk a little bit about the rotation. Parker Messick last night, really good. And again, had a good spring. That's a guy, you know, a lefty, throws a little bit harder, kind of almost a little funky motion, but throws pretty hard for a lefty, and he was really good against the Dodgers lineup that is loaded.
Yeah, by far the best start from this rotation, you know, the first time through, David. The other guys, Bybee, Bybee, Williams, Ciccone, and Cantillo kind of struggled a little bit in Seattle. It was cold. You know, that's a really good lineup too. So, you know, there were reasons for that, but Messick just came out and dominated last night. And, you know, against maybe the best lineup in baseball, certainly the most expensive. And 6 innings. I mean, he gives up a hit in the second pitch of the game and then just deals. 5 strikeouts, 4 walks, 4 hits, no walks. He only threw 76 pitches. So, you know, if this had been later in the season, he probably could have gone out for the 7th.
So Guardians, unbelievable tough start to the schedule. You know, you go to Seattle, you go to the Dodgers, and they're playing well. You know, I had said at the beginning, if they come back 3-4, that's a pretty good beginning to the season, given what you got. Heck, they can come back 4-3, 5-2, even if they can sweep them. There's some concerning things offensively, though. When you look at this, what do you go, man? They need to correct this offensively.
Well, I think it's, you know, this is kind of the same old story. You know, in Seattle, they had they split the series, but in the 2 losses they scored 1 run. You know, so okay, you know, I mean, Seattle's got a good pitching staff, but we've seen this before. You know, and so that's a concern. I think you know, they struck out a lot, but you know, I really liked the way they played last night. There was more, you know, akin to their style of play. You know, 9 hits, 2 doubles, and the rest are singles. They steal 3 bases. But, you know, scoring runs, I think, is going to be the major source of concern with this club as the season goes on.
You look at it, and you know, Gabriel Arias is not hitting to start the season. Rocchio's starting to hit a little bit better. How much patience do you think they have? You've got Bazana that they sent back. Nolan Jones is hitting the ball really well at AAA. How much patience do you think Stephen Vogt and the Guardians have with these guys offensively?
Yeah, I think they'll have a lot of patience. You know, the Dodgers have a great staff. They're going to go, like we were saying earlier, they're going to go home and face the Cubs in the home opener. Then Kansas City, you know, that is really has done nothing but improve over the last 2 years. So this is going to be a tough month, a tough stretch, and I think they'll be as patient as they can be with the guys that aren't hitting. I mean, they really like Arias at shortstop. You know, Rocchio has done a nice job for him. You know, he had a decent series in Seattle. Manzo is you know, still struggling to find his swing. But they need somebody to hit a home run besides DeLauter. Nobody else has.
What about Rhys Hoskins? That's a guy that his at-bats, again, there's something to seeing a lot of pitches and fighting through stuff. Hasn't had a lot of the results, but he's a guy that you can tell has been around and is a quote-unquote professional hitter.
Yeah, just a great at-bat last night in that 7th inning with the bases loaded and 2 outs. He's down 0-2 in a count, works it back to draw, you know, a bases loaded walk to force home a run. Then Schneemann follows with a 2-run double, and that was the difference in the ball game. So yeah, that was a professional at bat. Stephen Vogt called it the at bat of the game, and I think it was a 6-pitch at bat. And you're right, David. I mean, he just, you know, that's the experience playing. You know, that's his, you know, experience coming to the forefront, not, you know, controlling your emotions. Don't get too excited in a situation like that.
So DeLauter brings some offense to that 2-hole. Hoskins, when he's in there, will bring some. Who are some guys that you think, man, if they get going, this offense will be a whole lot better?
Yeah, you know, I think, you know, I always point to Bo Naylor to get it going. And because I think he has that power potential. He hit 14 home runs last year. He had a great spring training, really good in the WBC for Canada. I think that's a guy that I look for. You know, and Quan is off to a great start too. You know, had 3 hits last night. So, you know, I think, you know, we saw Quan a little up and down last year. He was dealing with that wrist injury, but I think he is back, you know, to full strength, and he's going to really help that top of the lineup, like you were saying, with DeLauter and then Ramirez. And you know, if his teammates, you know, don't try to tackle Jose Ramirez, I think you know, he'll start to hit. I mean, I thought Messick almost killed him last night.
And that is a big boy too. He's built like a linebacker.
You're not kidding. Yeah, he's like 220, 230. I thought he's going to wipe Jose off the face of the earth.
All right, before I let you go, Jonathan Rodriguez, DFA'd. They traded him to the Orioles. Got a minor league right-hander, Carter Rustad, from him. Take us through. I know you wrote an article about that. Take us through just that trade and kind of. It was necessitated because there just wasn't a spot for Rodriguez.
Yeah, there wasn't a spot, and I think, you know, he's been in the organization 9 years, David. You know, he's one of those guys that, you know, looks great at AAA, and then when he gets up to the big leagues, it doesn't transition. And, you know, yes, he didn't get a chance. He didn't get a whole lot of chances. It reminds me of you know, Jesus Aguilar a few years ago, and John Kenzie Noel. Those big guys with a lot of swing and miss. They've got to be in the right situation to make a ball club, and it just you know, for Noel, for a year it clicked, but last year it didn't. And you know, those guys have a tough time, you know, making contact and turning their power into, you know, a consistent power at the big leagues. And I think that's what happened to you know, Rodriguez. It's a shame. I hopefully you know, he solves that problem with the Orioles and you know, gets back to the big leagues.
Paul Hoynes, appreciate you joining us from Los Angeles, covering the Guardians against the Dodgers. Thanks very much, Hoynesy.
Thanks, Dave.
Paul Hoynes, make sure you check him out. He is covering the Guardians as they're getting ready to play the Dodgers later tonight. It will be Bybee against Ohtani. We'll have highlights of it tomorrow. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.